Hello everybody, this is Angel. I'm starting up a new channel, ASMR. Um, you have to forgive me. I haven't made a video in a while, so I don't know. But this channel is going to be called ASMR Angel Reads, and I'm going to read some books to you. I was torn over which ones to start with, but I decided to start with the Catherine Carr Devery series, and the first one is Daggerspell. This is actually quite a long series and can be quite confusing, but I will try to make it smooth so you can follow the story. I've read this series like, I don't know, 3 or 4 times. It's a pretty good one. I'm gonna try not to make these videos too long, so if we don't get through one chapter, I will read the rest of it later. Here, let's get started. The prologue in the year 1045. Men see life going from dark to darkness. The gods see life as a death. That's from the sacred book of the Cadwellian, the Druid. Okay, this is the prologue. In the hall of light, they reminded her of her destiny. There was all light, pulsing gold like the heart of a candle flame filling eternity. The speakers were pillars of fire within the fiery light, and their words were sparks. They, the great lords of the weird, had neither faces nor voices, because anything so human had long since been burned away by dwelling in the hall of light. She had no face or no voice either, because she was weak, a little flicker of pale flame, but she heard them speak to her of destiny, her grave task to be done, her long road to ride, her burdens that she must live life willingly. Many deaths have led you to this coming, he said to her. It is time to take your word in your hands. You belong to the Dwemer in your very soul. Will you remember? In the hall of light there was no lies. I'll try to remember, she said. I'll do my best to remember the light. She felt them grow amused. You would be helped to remember. Go now, it's time for you to die and enter the darkness. When she began to kneel before them, to throw herself down before them, they rushed forward and forbade her. They knew that were only servants of the one true light, paltry servants compared to the glory they served. The light shines beyond all gods. I need my reading glasses. Sorry, my reading's not so smooth. I haven't read out loud in a long time. When she entered the gray, misty land, she swept longingly for the light. There was all shifting fog, 1,000 spirits and visions, and the speakers were like the winds tossing her with words. They wept with her at the fall that she must make into darkness. These spirits of wind had faces, and she realized that she too now had a face, because they were all human and far from the light. When they spoke to her of fleshly things, she remembered lust, the ecstasy of flesh and pressed against flesh. But remember the light, they whispered to her. Cling to that light and follow the Dwemer. The wind blew her down through the gray mist. All around she her, she felt lust snapping like lightning in a summer storm. All at once she remembered summer storms, rain on a fleshy face, cool dampness in the air, warm fires, and the taste of food in her mouth. The memories netted her like a little bird and pulled her down and down. She felt him then too in his lust, a maleness that once she had loved, felt him close to her, very close like fire. His lust swept her down and down, around and round like the dead leaf caught in a tiny whirlpool at a river's edge. Then she remembered rivers, water sparkling under the sun, the light. She told herself, remember the light you swore to serve. Suddenly she was terrified. The task was very brave. She was very weak and human. She wanted to break free and return to the light, but it was too late. The eddy of lust swept her around and around till she felt herself grow heavy, thick and palpable. There was a darkness, warm and gentle, and a dreaming water darkness, the soft, safe prison of the moon. Oh, before I go on, this book is about magic, which they call the Dwemer in this. And it has a lot of reincarnations, and that's where it gets confusing, but I'll try to help you out with that. We're still in the prologue. In those days, down the Elden coast stretched wild meadows crisscrossed by tiny streams, where farmers there were pastured their cattle without bothering to lay claim to the land. Since the meadows were still a good place for a herdman to find new stock, old Nevin went there regularly. He was a shabby man with a shock of white hair that always needed combing and dirty brown clothes that always needed mending. But there was something about the look in his ice blue eyes that commanded respect even from the noble lords. Everyone who met him remarked on his vigor too, and that even though his face was wrinkled as old leather and his hands dark with frog spots, he strode around like a young prince. He never seemed to tire either, as he traveled long miles on horseback with a mule behind him to tend the ills of the various poor folk in Elden province. A marvel he is, the farmers all said, a marvel and a half, considering he must be near 80. None knew the true marvel that he was well over 400 years old and the greatest master of the Dwemer the kingdom had ever known. That particular summer morning, Nevin was out in the meadow to gather comfrey root, and the glove-finger white flowers danced on the skinny stems as he dug up the plants with a silver spade. The sun was so hot that he sat back on his heels and wiped his face on the old rag that passed for a handkerchief. It was then that he saw the omen. Out of the meadow, 2 larks broke cover with a heartbreaking beauty of song that was a battle cry. 2 males swept up, circling and chasing each other, yet even as they fought, the female who was their prize rose from the grass and flew away indifferently. With a cold clutch of Dwemer knowledge, Nevin knew that he soon would be watching 2 men fighting over a woman that neither could rightfully have. She had been born. Somewhere in the kingdom she was a new babe lying in her exhausted mother's arms on a mirror made of sky. He saw it with his Dwemer sight. In a sunny room, the midwife stood washing her hands in a basin. On the bed of straw and rags lay a pretty young lass, the mother, her face bathed in sweat from the birth, but smiling at a child in her breast. As Nevin's sight showed him the baby, the tiny creature, all damp and red, opened cloudy blue eyes and seemed to stare right at him. Evan jumped to his feet with sheer excitement. The Lord of the Weird had been kind. This time they were sending him the warning that someone was waiting for him to bring her to the Dreamer. Somewhere in the vast expanse of the kingdom, Devery, he could search and find her while she was still a child before the harsh circumstances made it impossible for him to untangle the snarl of their intertwined destinies. This time perhaps she would remember and listen to him. Perhaps he had found her. 10 minutes. My mouth and throat are dry. I don't normally read out loud. Anyway, that was the prologue. The main characters in these books are really Nevin, who they were just talking about. He's very, very old and a magician with the Dreamer. And then the baby that was just born, her name's going to be Jill, and she's an important character as well. In their past lives, they've crossed, and always something bad happens, and they never get together. But they die, and everybody dies and gets reincarnated, but Nevin's, because he has to set things to right. Okay, this is chapter 1. Gurgani in the year 1052. The young fool tells his master that he will suffer to gain the Dreamer. Why is he a fool? Because the Dreamer has already made him pay and pay and pay again, for he even stood on its doorstep. Chapter 1. A cold drizzle of rain fell. The last of the twilight was closing in like gray steel. Looking at the sky made Jill frightened to be outside. She hurried to the wood pile and began to grab firewood. The gray gnome, all spindly-legged and long-nosed, perched on a big log and picked at his teeth while it watched her. When she dropped a stick, it snatched it and refused to give it back. Beast, Jill snapped, then keep it. At the anger, and the gnome vanished with a puff of cold air. Half in tears, Jill hurried across the muddy yard to the circular stone building, a tavern where cracks of light gleamed around wooden shutters. Clutching her firewood, she ran down the corridor of the chamber and slipped in, hesitating a moment at the door. The priestess in her long black robe was kneeling by Mama's bed. When she looked up, Jill saw the blue tattoos of the crescent moon that covered half her face. Put some wood on the fire now, child. I need more light. Jill picked out the thinnest, pitchiest sticks and fed them into the fire burning in the hearth. The flames sprang up, sending flares of shadows and dancing around the room. Jill sat down on a straw covered floor in the very corner to watch the priestess. On her pallet, Mama lay very still, her face deadly pale, oozing drops of sweat from the fever. The priestess picked up the silver jar and helped Mama drink the herb water in it. Mama was coughing so hard that she couldn't keep the water down. Jill grabbed her rag doll and held her tight. She wished that Hillard was real and that she'd cry to Jill so Jill could be very brave and comfort her. The priestess set the silver jar down, wiped Mama's face, and began to pray, whispering the words in the ancient holy tongue that only priests and priestesses knew. Jill prayed too in her mind, begging the holy goddess of the moon to let her Mama live. Mason came to the doorway and stood watching, his thick pudding face set in concern, his blunt hands twisting the hem of his heavy linen overshirt. Macney owned this tavern where Mama worked as a serving lass and let her and Jill live in the chamber out of simple kindness to a woman with a bastard child to support. He reached up and rubbed the bald spot in the middle of his gray hair while he waited for the priestess to finish praying. How is she, Mason? It said. The priest looked at him, then pointedly at Jill. You can say it, Jill burst out. I know she's going to die. Do you, lass? The priestess turned to Mason. Here, does she have a father? Of a sort. He's a silver dagger, you see, and he rides this way every now and then to give them what coin he can. It's been a good long while since the last time. The priestess sighed in the hiss of irritation. I'll keep feeding the lass, Mason went on. Jill's always done a bit of work around the place, and ye gods, I wouldn't throw her out onto the street to starve anyway. Well, and good then. The priestess held out her hand to Jill. How old are you? 7, Your Holiness. Well, now that's very young, but you'll have to be brave, just like a warrior. Your father's a warrior, isn't he? He is a great warrior. Then you'll have to be as brave as he wants you to be. Come, say farewell to your mama, then let Mason take you out. When Jill came to the bedside, Mama was awake, but her eyes were red, swollen, and cloudy, as if she didn't really see her daughter standing there. Jill, Mama gasping for breath. Mind what Malco tells you. I will, I promise. Mama turned her head away and stared at the wall. Cullen, she whispered. Cullen was Dad's name, and Jill wished he was there. She had never wished for anything so much in her life. Mason picked Jill up, doll and all, and carried her from the chamber. As the door closed, Jill twisted around and caught a glimpse of the priestess kneeling to pray. Since no one wanted to come to the tavern with fever in the back room, a big half round of the alehouse stood empty. Wooden tails forlorn in the dim firelight. Mason sat Jill down near the fire and went to get her something to eat. Jill, behind her, stood a stack of ale barrels laced with particularly dark shadows. Jill was suddenly sure that death was hiding behind them. She made herself turn around and look because Dad always said a warrior should look death in the face. She found nothing. Mason brought her a plate of bread and honey and a wooden cup of milk. When Jill tried to eat, the food turned dry and sour in her mouth. With a sigh, Mason held up rubbed his bald spot. Well now, he said, maybe your dad will ride this way soon. I hope so. Mason had a long swallow of ale in his pewter tankard. Does your doll want a sip of milk? She doesn't. She's just rags. Then they heard the priestess chanting a long, sobbing note, kneeling for the soul of dread. Jill tried to make herself feel brave, then laid her head on the table and sobbed aloud. Well, I think that's all I'm going to read for now. Chapter 1's pretty long. And my throat and my mouth are getting dry from reading out loud. Thanks for watching. Bye.